In 2024, pretty much everyone was talking about lack of parity between the top level contenders in the ELF and those who were not really contending in the ELF. And this has become a very, very hot topic recently because of the addition of the Nordic Storm. If you didn't know, they get Denmark and they get Sweden. These are two nations that honestly could probably sustain an ELF team on its own. So I, in my infinite wisdom, have decided to take it upon myself to hypothesize some homegrown restructures to some of the teams that I think need additional homegrown support within their country. Now I'm going to be talking about every single country, and every single country is individual. There's a lot of history between some of these places, there's a lot of issues with visas, there's ongoing situations in the east naturally, and realistically a lot of these players work full-time jobs alongside the ELF, so asking someone to move from Bulgaria to somewhere else is never going to be an easy thing unless you're paying them enough money to sustain that, and we will talk about that situation as well. Final part before we get into it, all the music used by Shura Beats, link to the description as always, and First Down Magazine also linked to the description in collaboration with them, as you can see on my Instagram. So let's just get into the video.
What a run for Oyewo. Look at that speed right there, just right up the guts. And that Munich Ravens offensive line.
I don't really need to spend much time on Germany. It makes up most of the league's revenue, it makes up most of the league's players, most of the league's teams. Big markets like Dusseldorf, Berlin, Munich, Hamburg, Cologne, all covered. No need to really discuss this one too much in depth. Great future system as well, the Dusseldorf Panthers being one of the best used teams in Europe. Cologne have always produced really good players. There's a lot to love about Germany, and it's widely regarded as the best American football country in Europe. Teams could even start affiliating with their GFL teams. You've seen Dusseldorf with the Rhein Fire and the Dusseldorf Panthers have some collaboration and some overlap in terms of coaches and maybe in terms of players in the future. And I think that would benefit both of these teams a lot. There's basically a second team for a lot of these guys. Vienna and the Raiders have them in Austria, that we'll get to later. But I think that could be a positive progression and also kind of heal this ELF versus GFL agenda that some people like to push.
Terry just worked a little more magic in Stuttgart. And all credit where credit's due. Look at the time he got from the United Nations offensive line.
Austria is very, very, very similar to Germany. One of the best countries in Europe for American football, an amazing youth system, which one of the best in the world, and they also have key positions with the Vienna Vikings and with the Raiders Innsbruck, who are two very culturally rich teams in European American football. Both of these teams have enough facilities to have a team in a domestic league, and the AFL is one of the best in Europe as well. Danube Dragons could see themselves become the third team in the ELF. Salzburg, Graz, also big cities that contribute amazing players and amazing talent into the Vikings and Raiders system. I don't think they need any additional support either.
Ball pops out. In fact, does the ball pop out? He just gives it to his running back. So Salem about to hit the ground. Crawford says, come on mate.
Here's where we start getting into the allegedlys. The Italian team, the Milano Seamen, first and foremost need to change their fucking name. It's terrible. They're not going to get players into their location. It's such an amazing country, has so much to offer imports and national players, and they're called the Seamen. It sounds like a joke, honestly, it is a joke, but they need to change it. And just in terms of marketing and branding, they cannot be called that. American audience makes up a lot of the ELF, needs to change first and foremost. The allegedly part is that allegedly, the Milano Seamen board is one of the worst in the league. They have poor commitment to facilities, coaches are not being treated as well as they could have, they're rather cheap, and they haven't put out the groundwork for a lot of their best players to succeed. Now, of course, this is all my opinion and stuff I've heard through my connections within the team. Now, this isn't just a slandering towards the owners of the Milano Seamen, because I know how expensive it is to run an ELF team. It's incredibly expensive. But when they pushed to go into the ELF from the IFL in a year in which they did not win the league, they knew how expensive it would be to travel, to pay players, to improve facilities, to have their stadium, etc, etc. And from my understanding, they have not made the continued investment to run this team as well as it could, because there are so many good Italian players in this league. Vergani, Runco, Jordan Bua, none of those three play for the Milano Seamen. They need to attract players in. IFL. Honestly, the IFL is one of the best leagues in Europe at the moment. They had former NFL players like Ryan Griffin, Damon Sheehy Giuseppe. Like, these players were not playing in Milan. very close to Milan in the Lugano Frogs instance, but the Jaguari, the Frogs, the Scorpions, Florence, Parma, these teams are all very successful within the domestic league, and a lot of them would take out the European competition, yet we're not seeing a lot of their best players. Some of the Milan players this season have actually moved to the IFL rather than play for the Milan Seamen. So there's still a lot going on with this one, quite an ongoing case. I do not think they need any additional support. What I think they need to do is rebrand the team as a whole, completely rebrand the team, or swap out Milan and put someone like Florence or Parma in. Sounds brutal, but this is business.
For the Madrid Bravos. Duncan with the patience, waiting for the play to develop. Devils.
Another one where I'm going to be saying allegedly a lot, so bear with me. First and foremost, I love Madrid. Madrid, great team, great core, great coaches, great investment from what I've heard. I have no issues. I actually haven't heard anything negative come out of the Madrid camp this season. However, Barcelona have been a massive issue for the league this season, and people really complaining about the league not saving Barcelona. Barcelona is its own private entity. Their board allegedly was terrible, and it's not even alleged at this point because we know they didn't play a lot of their players. We know that they had a lot of issues with that. They fell apart mid-season. They had some potential. Their coaching wasn't great. They had a lot of issues going on in the background, some of which I don't know. It's all very, very ongoing. They had players coming in for 1 week, leaving because they didn't get paid. They had visa issues with some of their players, allegedly. They didn't bring in proper visa applications and stuff like that, allegedly. It's a mess, and I did not think that they would be back for the 2025 season, but they have signed onto the team alliance, so we'll see how that develops. What they need to do, first of all, I'm going to give them Portugal. I'm going to give Portugal to them. I would consider giving it to Madrid, but I'd be trying to promote that more to Barcelona, and I know that Madrid is closer to Portugal. You kind of got to work with me here. I'm trying to see what I can do for this team. I'm going to give them to Portuguese talent, let them hold combatants in Portugal, and try and draw in some more role players, some more potential stars for the team, because they lost so much Spanish talent. And if you think that Spanish players in the LNFA are going to want to go to Barcelona after this season, you're fucking tripping. It's going to be really hard to attract players to this team this season. Americans, maybe a little bit easier. They might not know the situation. Europeans, everyone knows how bad the Barcelona Dragons were. To attract Europeans is going to be one hell of a task. We don't know what their coaching staff looks like. We don't really know much from Barcelona at the moment. They've been MIA for a while. So we'll see what they do. They have got a mountain to climb, to be honest, and hopefully they can make the adjustments, because Barcelona are one of the founding fathers of European American football when it comes to NFL Europe and stuff like that. Everyone wants to see them succeed. Alex Malchow, of course, no one's going to remember your death, no one's going to remember what you did in life, but people are going to remember the Barcelona Dragons, and we want them back. We want a competitive El Clasico, but there's going to be a lot of issues that are more than just bringing in Portugal when it comes to Barcelona Dragons.
This team, in fact, the top receiver, one of the top NE10.
I hope you are ready for more allegedlys, because this one is very, very fresh, very, very ongoing, and I'm still getting messages about it right now. So, you bear with me. I'm going to not be able to say a ton of stuff that's going on, but Helvetic are a mess. They're bored. We've had them rebrand the team already. There was a new team, Helvetic Gods, got rebranded in its second season to Helvetic Mercenaries. I'm going to be real. I don't know if they're going to be back for 2025. Players allegedly are still dealing with pay disputes within the team. We thought this was going to be changed. We thought this was going to get better. So far it has not, which is a very, 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 very big issue. A lot of the Swiss players, great Swiss talent by the way. They need to attract more, and I'll get to that in a minute. But they're choosing to not play in the Mercenaries. They're choosing to play in the domestic league. I'm not being funny. The Swiss domestic league is not as good as Austria or Germany or other places. So the fact they're choosing to stay in the country and not play for them is very, very telling in my opinion. However, I'm going to give them some options. It's tough because Switzerland, landlocked country, is also ELF landlocked. Germany, France, Italy, Austria, all of those players already have a homegrown status within other countries. There aren't any countries that border Switzerland that don't have any LF teams, so it's very, very tough to allocate players. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to allow them dual passports. But I'm going to allow them dual passports for Italy, for France, for Germany, for Austria, and for England as well. Just due to the amount of people that go between countries, and England doesn't have any of that team. I'm going to allow them dual passports. It's a tough one. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to allow them to do that until 2030. If the team is around until 2030. Gives them time to develop a youth base. It gives the time for the country to develop more of a footballing culture. And they still get these dual passports in if they want to choose to play for the Mercenaries instead of Milan or any of the German teams. They feel like they can make more of an impact in this team, or they relate more with the Swiss culture. Like I said, this one's very, very tough because of the board and because of the just geographically Switzerland isn't in the most advantageous position when it comes to having other countries enter into its homegrown rules.
Defense, Paris special teams answers right back.
There is a ton of French talent, and all of it plays for the Paris Musketeers mostly. Few imports obviously here and there, but France has such a good amount of American football talent that it really doesn't need any additional support. In fact, it's probably one of the only teams within this league that I think could lose some of its homegrown talent if we see the addition of a second French team. Bordeaux, Marseille, Lyon, all these places have been discussed by people like me about potential places that we could see a second French team in the ELF. I think they have the talent for it. Am I saying I want to see that? Not necessarily, but it's an option, right? We're just talking about options because personally, I could maybe see it. It could be a decent rivalry. There's enough players in the French domestic league, I think, to facilitate some expansion into the south of France, create more of a rivalry with some of the people down there, and also help out the Southern Conference if we do get a Southern Conference. It's an intriguing proposition. Not saying I want it, not saying we need it now, but it could potentially be a discussion for the future.
Trying to fit it into a really tight window, unable to do so. And Devin Burrell weaving in and out of traffic, finding daylight. Mangle with that knee is not going to be able to catch him.
The Wrocław Panthers, of course, the only team in Poland, and they've taken majority of the Polish talent from the domestic league, and the domestic league is a very good league as well. So why do Poland get additional countries? Well, I'm going to give them Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, just due to just getting these places to have more of a footballing culture. There really isn't much in any of these countries. It is more a basketball region, but you never know. You could find some decent athletes who want to cross over. This is just helping facilitate the Wrocław Panthers into becoming a little bit better, because they are a great team. They don't need that much help, but you never know. Could find a couple players and introduce them into the ELF. From my understanding as well, Wrocław do have one of the better boards in the league. They have been active in their player roles, and they've made a lot of progression as a franchise over the last few years, especially in terms of attendance. That was a big one this season. So I think the Wrocław do have a very good base, very good nucleus, but of course they're not perfect. Ton of issues at the start of the season, especially with the quarterback position, that I'm not going to get too much into. However, it's clear that they also need to have some stability within that franchise. Hopefully this will bring in just a couple more players that can help out.
His own power, now Mangle takes a second down snap, throws it, and it's high in the air, and it'll be intercepted by the Lions.
Czechia, Prague Lions, it's the only team. The domestic league is not very good, I'm going to be honest. The Prague Black Panthers are in the Austrian Football League and also are the Austrian Football League champions. Very confusing, it's very political. There are a few players that can make the jump over, not all of them. I think people think that if you added the Black Panthers into the Lions, they'd automatically become a lot better a team. It's not necessarily the case. I think there are definitely some players that can make the jump, but we'll see how that transitions this off-season. There's of course players on this channel that I've spoken about that play in the Czech League and that I really enjoy watching, so I'd also like to see them make the jump in the future. Czechia does have a decent youth system. It's kind of coming through. It's not great, but we've seen some decent players come out of it in the past, and hopefully we'll see more of that in the future. Now, I'm not uneducated. I'm very aware that this part of the world has had a lot of history between its countries, and I'm not going to really discuss that. However, I'm going to give them Serbia, and I'm going to call that the Alexander Budkovic rule, just because he is such a good player. He is Serbian. He counts as an E for this team. I think that he should count as a homegrown because he is very important to that team, and I think that they should count as a homegrown because I want them to. Slovenia, they already have Slovakia as a homegrown rule because they border. Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. Again, this is not going to add a ton of talent because some of these countries aren't necessarily footballing talents. We had Croatia have the international series, potentially a couple players to bring into the Prague lines. Prague do have a good base of players. There are some really good Czech players. I think, in my opinion, that Czechia has a better footballing talent as a nation than Hungary, and we'll get to them in a second. Therefore, I've given them the smaller countries in the Baltic and Mediterranean region.
Engels took the snap, and a simple out route right there by Toe.
Hungary and the Verheerwijnrunners. Tough situation for them to really compete in. They have formerly played in the Austrian league system. Their domestic league in Hungary is pretty much non-existent. There really isn't much. There is a few, there's a little bit. It's better than some countries, but it's probably the worst of the ELF. Youth system wise, very little. I'm gonna be honest, there's very little. And if they're quite close to the border, sometimes they will just play in Austria. So it's a tough one. In terms of what I'm going to give them, Bulgaria, Romania, Albania and Greece. It's a lot of populous countries, not necessarily the easiest to recruit from, because again, history of the region, and it's going to be very hard to convince someone from Greece to move to Hungary and learn a new language and potentially work a different job. So it's going to be hard, and this is the team that is probably the toughest to add more rules into. But adding big countries, very big countries, you could potentially add some dual passports into, would allow them to be a bit more competitive. They were much better this year than they were last year, as were Prague. So they're getting there. I'm just going to give them some additional support. Hopefully they can hold combines in all of these countries and bring in a couple new guys, because if you brought in 2 from each country, that's 8 new players. That's most of a defense or most of an offense. So it'd be very good for the team, I think. Very good for the league to add these countries in that aren't necessarily big American football countries, again, more basketball region. But you could add something in, and I want to see players from these countries represented in the ELF. And that is all of the countries that cover the ELF. Of course, we have the Nordic Storm coming in that are more Copenhagen and Malmo. Like they are going to play in Copenhagen, I believe, as their like home base. So more of a Danish leaning orientation. But I guess we'll find out. They get a big slice of the European American football talent, because Sweden, I've linked the video of the talent they have in their disposal, and some people have, I think, logically asked some questions to the league. From my understanding, these approaches, and maybe not these exact approaches of expansion, have been proposed to the league, so we'll see if anything happens with that. I hope that it does. This is basically my plea as an analyst of this league. I fucking adore this league, and I just want to see more talent come into it. So if you like this, subscribe. I'll be making a ton of content. Slow down a little bit because my masters, but I'm going to be putting some of that into it because digital marketing, you know, I'm going to put a little bit of marketing spin on my stuff. So we'll see how that goes. Again, members get this today early. New laptop, not sure if you can tell by the video quality, which was his own story that I'll tell on stream at some point. Hope you guys enjoyed. I will see you next time. Like, share, all that good stuff. See you soon. Thank you again to everyone who watches these videos. It means a lot. This is probably going to push me over 4,000 hours at the end of the week. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. See you later. Goodbye. I'm going to give them Serbia because I'm going to call it the Borkovic rule, because I want... The fuck is that?